Today I'm at one of the best theme parks in the world, Efteling, in the Netherlands, for my Smell of Immersion project, so I'll be sniffing all sorts of different smells. And as of 2018, Efteling had 36 scenting systems in the park, and perhaps even more these days. Now as we approach the park, we see the House of the Five Senses, and each peak of the building represents a different scent. So one of those peaks represents smell, and I think that's just such a fabulous kind of manifesto and promise of the multi-sensory experience that awaits within. We've just been on Symbolica, and interestingly there was no particular smell in the intro room, as is often the case, and there weren't really smells we could pick up in the ride other than a kind of mustiness when we looked over the seascape. But there was a nice sweet smell in the shop at the end, which was perhaps there to entice people to buy things, and as it happens I bought the room spray, which interestingly smells a lot different to the smell that I'm used to smelling in Symbolica. I'm at Efteling at a bit of a historic time in terms of its smellscape, because on the 14th of November, where smoking is currently allowed everywhere outside, apart from certain areas in the Fairytale Forest and in the queues, there are going to be 10 smoking areas. So it'll no longer be allowed pretty much everywhere, and it's going to be kind of isolated to spots that can't be seen or smelt by fellow guests. I've just been kind of observing, and so far yesterday I saw 3 people vaping and 3 people smoking in the park, and I smelt them too, as it happens. And then there are a couple of people smoking at the hotel as well, and I saw another person vaping today. So it's still very much a common thing here, but let's see how the smoking areas change the smellscape. Now hang on a second, what am I doing in a different outfit? Well, the thing is, I'm back here in 2024. The video you've been watching was filmed in 2022. So I'm here about a year and a half later, and I'm sniffing to see if the smellscape has changed. So this video will kind of jump between years on occasion. Something that's very interesting is that last time I was here, they were just about to ban smoking at the park, which was previously allowed everywhere. And in the entrance hall in the House of the Five Senses, they had an announcement going on saying that smoking isn't allowed and that you have to go to a smoking zone. So that's already a change in the smellscape is afoot. I was thinking, like, are people really going to obey it? Is it going to be a bit of a Disneyland Paris situation? But actually, walking around, I haven't seen a single person, not even a vape, haven't sniffed a single whiff of any such fumes. So it seems like it was a good move. That being said, I've just walked past one of the new smoking zones, and it's like a kind of hedge. They have hedges around the zones, and I could smell the smoke coming through. But that's fine, it's not really distracting from the experience. I forgot to mention it's also my 30th birthday, and I'm wearing my little Melanie Ravenswood cufflinks. There are lots of smelly food kiosks at Efteling, and particularly in this German area. I was here last night and it smelled like a Christmas market, and it looked like one too. It's 2024 again, and I just did Max and Moritz, and in the queue I could smell the food from the German area coming out of a vent, which was kind of directed at the queue. I don't know whether that was intentional or not, but puts you in the mood for food when you get off the ride. The bakery cafe has a kind of bready smell to it, and it's very similar, I feel, to the Holle's Kitchen smell. So that was the pancake restaurant that I had dinner in last night. It was a very nice dinner. Yeah, so there's a kind of mental association I make between the two now. Yeah, and it's quite pleasant. It's quite a pleasant smell. The Pancake Kitchen has an open kitchen area, so where they're preparing the food, you can see it all happening, and I imagine some of the smell is from that. As you would expect, there's quite a strong coffee smell in the coffee shop, very noticeable. Droomvlucht, and I hope I've pronounced that right, is a fairy-themed ride where you fly over flowers and fairies and trolls and that kind of thing. And it has a very beloved floral smell. And interestingly, during the height of the coronavirus pandemic, rides like Droomvlucht had their scents turned off to save money because obviously there were long periods when the parks had to close and they were kind of losing profits. What's great about this ride is that in 2018 they opened a VR version, so it's like an accessible alternative for those that can't go on the ride vehicles. And during that you put on a headset and there's a pneumatic atomizer that releases sensors, aerosols at timed intervals, so you can kind of get a similar multi-sensory experience to how it is being on the physical version of the ride, the more kinetic version. So the 2 times I've been to Efteling before this one, Droomvlucht has been closed, haven't been able to go on it. Everyone says it's the best smell in the world. I did a Twitter poll and that smell came up as number 1 out of the smells in Efteling. And I just did it and I didn't smell anything. They didn't seem to have the smells on. Maybe one day I'll get to sniff it. I'm just exiting Fata Morgana, approaching the gift shop, and it's right here that I can smell the soapy incensey smell. There's a nice sign here for the incense, which can be kind of understood by anyone from any country, no need for text. Just went on Fata Morgana. Interestingly, the smell was different to how I remember it. There was a kind of soapy smell, which is the same soapy smell as what I bought as a room spray. And previously in 2018 when I went on the ride, you could smell that soapiness from the very beginning when you went into the ride. But this time in the opening scene, which was the jungle, there was like a really dense muddy smell which I was quite impressed by. And then following that there was kind of less of a smell presence, and then in the kind of palace scene there was this incense smell, followed by the same mud smell again to round everything off when you went back into the jungle to finish the experience. People have really strong connections, like emotional connections to smells associated with their like childhood memories and that kind of thing. So it can really affect them when beloved smells disappear. And actually there was recently some controversy around Universal Studios' E.T. ride, which has traditionally had a pine smell in the entrance that people have strong connections to. And it changed. People thought it had been swapped with a different pine smell and they were outraged. And it turned out that actually the diffusers had just been kind of cleaned up and put back into action after a long time. And what people had been forming a connection to over all those years was more the kind of damp mustiness of the show building, with like remnants of pine from maybe years ago when the smell had actually been diffused properly. So what this so-called new smell actually was just the original smell being pumped in again through cleaned up diffusers. So it's interesting how fierce and loyal people can be towards smells that they have a connection to. On that topic, Efteling sells sprays of its rides, so you can kind of own the smell of Fata Morgana or Symbolica. I'm not sure if they are the same oils as are used in the rides, because they do smell rather different, although the Fata Morgana one does smell like Fata Morgana did when I came in 2018. The smells were a bit different this year. But anyway, that's a nice way for people to kind of own a piece of the ride and transport themselves when they get back home. 2024, Liam speaking here. It's not really a change in the smellscape, but the Symbolica, or at least probably all the smell merchandise they have now, the bottles, the spray bottles are a bit thicker, which is maybe so that they sell more. I'm not sure. I didn't look at the price. We just watched Raveleijn, and what's interesting about a live show with lots of pyrotechnics is that often at the finale there's a big kind of boom with lots of fire everywhere, and we had that effect during that show. And you get that smell, that kind of fiery, fake fire smell, I guess, like fuel, which kind of emphasizes the feeling of the heat on you. and the site. I just went on Vogel Rok, which is an indoor roller coaster themed around birds. And when you go in at the very beginning, there's like smoke everywhere, and then you dip into the darkness. And there was this cookie smell, like this really strong cookie smell. And I had to ride it twice, which was quite a mission because it's very intense on your bones, shaking them around. And yeah, I thought that was an interesting choice. I'm not sure what the cookie smell had to do with birds, but and flight, but it was really effective anyway, because you go in and it was really intense, and it kind of uplifted me. I thought, wow, this is a great experience, or it's going to be a great experience before you get kind of shaken around. But yeah, that was intriguing. I wasn't expecting that. I suppose what's worth noting is that Vogel Rok is an indoor coaster. There are some instances when scent can be used successfully on a roller coaster that has outdoor elements, like the Disney's Incredicoaster, where you go through tubes so that the scent is kind of contained and timed so that it works effectively. And also Universal Studios Hagrid ride, which is mostly outdoors, but you go into a kind of hut and a scent releases in there, so that's kind of contained. So there are ways of working scent into roller coasters that are mainly outdoors. It's 2024, Liam here again with a little update. I went on Vogel Rok yesterday. Last time I went on it, it had this cookie smell that didn't really fit in with the theme, but it was quite uplifting. There was no smell at all this time, no artificial smell at least. I don't think it's much of a loss because the use of a cookie smell last time was neither here nor there. Maybe something more appropriate to the theme could work well, but as I say, I don't think a smell is all that essential in that ride, because there's not much visual context to partner with the smells. I'm in the Fairytale Forest, and there's a very strong, in some places, a very strong organic smell that kind of smells like fried beans, like string beans, if that's what they're called. And also I'm on this path that's like between the route, and lo and behold, I find a smoking area. So you can see this is a smoking area that's already in the Fairytale Forest. I've just reached the Hansel and Gretel house, and it was at this point approaching it, so just around the corner, when I picked up the sweet smell. And this is the site of one of the earliest and most ambitious theme park scenting examples, at least for the time, because as early as 1954, the Efteling tried to scent these lemonade fountains, or they're called lemonade fountains. And what they did is they put a pancake aroma oil in them, which should have kind of spread a pancake smell around. And they were panicking because the pancake smell just wasn't coming out no matter how much they put in. It was just disappearing. And it was actually suggested that the chlorophyll in the trees was neutralizing the pancake smell. So that kind of failed in the end. Despite that initial failure, although I do admire it, there was actually an equally ambitious and successful attempt in 2016 when the Hansel and Gretel house was refurbished. And that involved a really innovative approach to scenting outdoors, which can be such a challenge because once you diffuse something, you've got this massive forest where the scent can just disappear. So what they did is the cakes at the entrance to the house, they have the scents coming out of them. So the scent diffusers are concealed and the scents are coming out where the guests are going to be gathering, so they get that really strong effect. And I imagine it's pumping out constantly to make sure it's nice and strong, and it really is effective. So you have a kind of cake smell quite a lot of the time, but also like now that winter's coming along, there's a lovely cinnamon smell coming out, and it's very welcoming, and it really brings those sweet visuals to life. You really feel like you're smelling the house itself, especially when you can like spot the sweets that you're actually smelling at that moment. I'm here in 2024 again, and this time the Hansel and Gretel house is being rebuilt, which means the smelly cakes have been ripped out. You can't smell anything anymore. The absence makes me ponder upon the smell that was here. It kind of works as part of the story because, like Hansel and Gretel, you were drawn towards the house. And now that it's not here, you're not really drawn towards anywhere. You're just walking past construction fences. What is exciting is that the Hansel and Gretel house will be back, and I assume the smells will be back. And it will be interesting to see if they apply the same method, that very clever way of pushing the scents through the wall towards the cakes, or if they'll have some kind of new method planned. In my opinion, the Pinocchio display with its fishy fish is one of the most ingenious examples of outdoor scenting at a theme park, paired with the Hansel and Gretel house, which I also think is impressive, because like I say, scenting outdoors can be such a big challenge because the scent just disappears so quickly. But in this instance, the scent is underground and it's sent up through the barriers, and I've never encountered smelly barriers in any other theme park in the world or any other place in the world. And what's really clever about this is the smell, the holes in the barrier where the smells come out are situated where there's an interactive fishing rod, which you use to tickle the fish's nose, because the text says that there's something strange going on in the fish's stomach and you need to tickle it to make it open its mouth. So when it opens its mouth, you get this fishy whiff that actually comes from the barrier, but you can hardly, unless you're looking for it, you would just assume that the smell's coming from the fish's mouth. So I think that's really super clever. When the Pinocchio display was made in 2016, there were multiple attempts by perfumers to get the fishy smell right. And in the end, they actually worked with animal feed manufacturers from the fishing industry whose products smelt of fish and poo to get the smell just perfect. There's a smell as soon as you step into this kind of tavern-y fairy tale story. It's something about a donkey, I think. I think it's meant to be like a tavern smell. It's kind of hard to identify, but you kind of, when you're in there, you don't really care what the smell is. You don't even think about it, and that's what the case should be when it comes to smells. You shouldn't really be thinking about them. They just kind of blend into the atmosphere, and it enhances everything seamlessly, and that's kind of what happens in this building. You don't really know what the smell is, but there's a smell, so it means that the building is lived in and there's a story going on there. And then the Snow White, kind of similarly, the Snow White building, that has an appley smell in it, or at least I assume it's an appley smell. It's very sweet. I can't really identify it, but again, it's kind of the same approach. There's a smell, and it kind of takes you into that world no matter what it actually represents. It doesn't really matter, you don't care. It's about being immersed in the moment. I think artificial smells are especially effective in the Fairytale Forest because you don't expect them. You're in a forest where you kind of don't expect smells, or at least you would just kind of expect them to be organic, like leaves and mud. So when you're walking through the forest and you suddenly smell fish or cinnamon, it really hits you and really immediately transports you. I'm in 2024 again, and I'm at the Little Match Girl diorama, and the smell is extra strong today, and my friend just noticed where the smell is possibly coming from. I mean, when we were approaching the castle here, the match smell was just wafting at us in the wind in the pathway leading to it. And we think it's in this room just before the main display room.
Is haar eenvoudige beden. Mag één enkel stokje aan de bundel ontbreken.
Here at the Chinese Nightingale building, there's a really strong jasmine smell that hits you the moment you enter the building. There was a particular scent boost in the 2010s when scents were added to some of the dioramas, like the Chinese Nightingale diorama and the Snow White kind of building that you walk in. It's almost like a walkthrough. So the Fairytale Forest, despite it not being a ride, it's actually really, really smelly. And I think it's an ideal place for that because it really brings the fantasy out. you can kind of have a signature scent for each story that's being told in a very immediate and quick way with these dioramas. So it's a great way of communicating that fantasy. I'm at one of the little hidden Fairytale Forest smoking areas, and they've got these kind of tubes where you can drop your cigarettes into, and it is so stinky. I was on the train yesterday and we went under a tunnel, and there was a really strong fuel smell, which I imagine came from the train itself and was kind of contained by the tunnel. That was quite interesting. We've got the steaming train over there, and I can smell it. I smelled it as we walked into this area. And what's interesting is that this year it was announced that they're removing, well, they're not removing the train, they're making it electric. And people are concerned that it will remove that nostalgic smoky smell, the coal burning smell. But I've heard it said that they're going to be adding an artificial smell to make up for that. I just did the Fabula 4D cinema experience, so you watch a film and smells come out and the seat shakes and that kind of thing. The smells didn't seem to be working like they were supposed to. When I entered, there was like a burnt match smell lingering, and then you went like into Africa and it kind of smelt of poo, and then an animal farted but you couldn't smell anything, and then they went into the jungle and that also smelt of poo. So I don't know, it was fun. 4D cinemas tend to use scent beads, which are basically scented beads, and the air blows over them to release the scents, and sometimes they can kind of lose their potency because you have to replace them over and over to keep the scents potent. So I assume in that experience they'd maybe just lost some of their potency, or you know, other smells were lingering, or they'd mixed together in the tubing and kind of combined. I'm not sure. I've just done Fabula again 1.5 years later, and this time I didn't smell anything at all. Last time it was a bit on and off as to the success. Yeah, this time it seems they haven't topped it up since, which might be for the best. Sometimes scent effects don't work out ideally, and it can be best to just leave them. Or you are left with this kind of sound whenever a smell's meant to appear and it doesn't. But that's how it goes sometimes. So last time I was here, I couldn't go on the Flying Dutchman well, I went on the Flying Dutchman to sniff the queue, but single rider didn't have any smells. I went on the normal queue this time and there still weren't any smells. There was like a whiff of something at first. They seem to have been a bit neglected. However, going through there, I could tell, like with all that scenery and atmosphere, I could tell how smells could really have the potential to enhance it. And also, where there was a very impressive smell was on the ride itself, when you're floating through the fog and you're meant to be at sea. That was probably one of the best salty sea smells I've ever smelled. Artificial salty sea smells. That's assuming it was an artificial salty sea smell and not just the smell of the fog. It's hard to tell, but it works really well anyway. I picked up a scent when I walked into the costume shop there, and I noticed when I turned around and I looked above the entrance, there was a scent machine and you could see the mist coming out. It smells similar to what I've smelled elsewhere at the park, so I wonder if they kind of reuse the same scents, like it has a kind of Efteling-y smell to it. Yesterday I could smell a kind of fishy smell in the queue for the swinging boat. I couldn't tell if it was intentional, if it was from the kind of fishy food restaurant over there, because I can smell it rather clearly here, and then there's like a gap before the smell of the fishy food eatery over there. So I'm not sure, but it's a good effect anyway. If it is from the eatery, then it's a nice double usage of the smell, in my opinion. Okay, I'm back here in 2024 and I can confirm that the swinging ship still stinks of fish, which is quite interesting and exciting, so maybe it is intentional. The sweet shop, like most sweet shops these days, smells of sweets. I don't think it's artificial. I think it's just the smell that comes off, like the jelly beans and the lollies and the what's that thing called? Marshmallows. But of course it's enticing and it boosts sales. What did you say it smells like?
Smells like the Carousel in Santa Monica.
I'm in my Lunchland. Gosh, my throat is so sore from screaming on Baron today. I'm in my Lunchland hotel room, and it's much bigger than I could ever need. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 beds, as is the minimum I request for my rooms. In the bathroom, we have Efteling's new range of home scenting, which they sell in their shops. So this is hand soap, which is apparently kumquat and bourbon vanilla, and it smells like bubblegum. And then in the shower, we have the shampoo and we have the body wash. The shampoo and the body wash and the hand soap are all pretty standard. They remind me of Christmas, actually. When you open a Christmas present and you have toiletries, it's just generic nice smells, which is a nice thing for them to try out, I suppose. What a lovely adventure that was, sniffing Efteling. I could sniff it forever. And what a treat at the end when I was doing my shopping to find a scent machine above the doorway. An appropriate ending. Completely by coincidence, I was just in a Delft cafe and I went into the bathroom and I thought, this smells a bit like those Efteling room sprays. And then I looked on the little shelf and they had like the exact same packaging and labelling style as the room sprays and the reed diffusers that Efteling sells. So it seems the company that does their scented merchandise has a few little bits out around the area. I found an intriguing use for the room sprays because I was just in TK Maxx and it had a really dense, clammy retail smell that I didn't like and I left. And then I remembered I have this blotter from Efteling that smells of Fata Morgana in my pocket, so I left the shop and I gave it a sniff and I transported myself to the ride. So it's kind of like a nice portable bit of transport. It reminds me of the old days when people would have perfume jewellery or like handkerchiefs. So that's a nice little trick. The room sprays don't necessarily have to be used for rooms. You could just put some on some paper and keep it in your pocket. And all of a sudden those doors are opening and I'm about to go into the Forbidden City. How lovely.